What's up, everybody? I'm Fernando Mastrangelo. Welcome back to Design Discord. Today, I'm here with Ashlee Harrison, the extraordinaire. She's done everything from design PR to worked with Design Miami, worked with Carpenters Workshop for over 10 years, and now is doing her own project at 38 East in the Upper East Side. We get into a bunch of cool subjects, including taking Carpenters Workshop and expanding their gallery from New York to Los Angeles to San Francisco and Aspen, to working with designers like the Campana Brothers, Nacho Carbonell, Studio Drift. We talked about the fair system, and of course we get into what 38 East is all about, the salon that where she gets to really spread her wings as a curator and cultural tastemaker. Ashlee, thanks for being on the pod. Welcome. Where are we in the life cycle of collectible design as you see it today?
That's a really good question. I feel that over the past 10 years, we've seen a major market shift where people are becoming more interested, not just in what's on their walls, but the objects and the works that they live with them. And I think we're coming into a mature period where people are really embracing it as another form of or genre, you could say, of fine art, of collectible, and it's a pretty, I think, good place to be.
Is it right? So you feel like it's a robust time for collectible design, or how would you, define it? I mean,
robust. I think that it's been consistent. I think there's always going to be a need for a chair or a table or an object, right? And people have these emotional connections to the objects, especially when they learn the stories and they're learning how it's made and how the piece kind of sits within its moment in history. Mm-hmm. And I think there's much more attention being given to that now than ever. And I think that the pandemic kind of propelled that, and was a really strong moment that now we've kind of continued to build upon and put it forward. Whereas I would say 10, 15 years ago, art advisors wouldn't necessarily be touching the design market. It's much more of a regular conversation today. And that's very much why I have, started this new chapter.
Mm-hmm. Well, so do you feel like are interior designers functioning as advisors right now, or is it mostly art advisors really coming over to this kind of collectible market?
I think it's both. Design advisors, which I think is a very niche thing. There's not very many of them, is its own thing. They're approaching it more from the aspect of collectibility, history, context. Art advisors now included as one of their genres of offering, and interior designers, at least of a certain level, have always had it as part of their conversation. Just sometimes now I feel that a decorator or an interior designer is looking at it from additionally more of an aesthetic point of view and how it places into the overall project, where an advisor would approach it more as a collection stance.
So let's go back a little bit to, you've done PR, you worked with Design Miami, but at 28, which is kind of young, you got brought into Carpenters Workshop Gallery.
I did. I didn't think about it that way, but it was rather young now that I look back at it.
Yeah, and it was kind of a huge responsibility in a lot of ways, like basically establishing it in the United States.
Well, I didn't even know what that meant. I think when you're young and you're not naive, but excited, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and you just are like, and the world is anything's possible. The world is your oyster. And that was very much my spirit. And I think also in many ways continues to be. But it was more about having an idea of looking at these European galleries and seeing that there was a relative void in the market here in New York and in the US to be able to give them a platform to show. And Carpenters was a gallery that I always had super respect for. I love their artists, their program. It was very avant-garde. And I had actually approached them about doing an exhibition in New York, one of the founders, thinking it was going to be part of my consulting, business that I was going to start. And that quickly turned into the conversation of, we want you to open up an office and we want to do this full on. And then from there, it just grew. So it started from finding an office, which ended up being the Fifth Avenue space. Wow. Kind of thinking about what that ethos of Carpenters was, and is and continues to be, and how that could translate to New York, and what more New York is it than having this incredible penthouse on Fifth Avenue. So from there, it was just, an uphill trajectory.
Well, take us to that moment. I mean, it's just like you get the job, you're like, okay, are you building the roster? What is your job exactly?
I mean, I wore many hats in the early stages. So initially, it was acting on their behalf and with the founders to establish the business. So that meant finding the real estate, finding the space, negotiating the lease, hiring the architects, setting up the U.S. business infrastructure, setting up the accounts, hiring the staff, and then going out and doing the business getting. So the development of the existing artist roster and bridging that to the U.S. market, getting it in front of the right constituencies of collectors, museums, and interior designers and professionals, and then translating that and growing that. And then as that, those early days became more, we became more established, then our team started to grow, and we looked at other markets like San Francisco, Aspen, Los Angeles, and it was always really looking forward and progressing forward in that way.
Were those expansions due to demand coming from those areas, or was it like, we just think that we might have an audience there?
I think I've always been very intuitive in my approach of how I make decisions, both personally, professionally, and with this business in particular. And it started off before we had the space ready in New York. I spent that winter out in Los Angeles, and that was 2014 or 2015, and I just knew that there was an appetite for what we were doing on the West Coast and in that market, because there was really nothing like that there at that time. And people have beautiful properties. They host a lot in their homes. So that was really kind of the beginning stages of, kind of creating necessity and awareness.
Because I feel like you guys almost, as the gallery evolved, like you guys were sort of establishing the market for this type of work in the United States. Because, I mean, when I think of Carpenters, I think of it as like the Gagosian of furniture.
I think many people do.
Yeah. And, Gagosian obviously has established, it's a totally different business. But in this sense, you guys were, like, it felt like collectible design was starting to kind of come up the upswing. And you guys caught that wave, and we're able to say, okay, we are the gallery that is going to kind of present the highest quality collectible design in the world.
Right.
And but it felt like it was like these expansions were kind of like premonitions towards like, okay, we're going to areas where there is a lot of wealth. It's like, we're going to, there's a lot of money in San Francisco and Los Angeles, and we'll kind of like almost train these collector base here to understand why this is important.
And I think that they're very open and eager for it too. And
they were,
San Francisco or LA, they're two different markets,
very different markets,
completely different type of collector mentality. And in many ways, I feel that San Francisco, the Bay Area, they're much more design oriented, solution oriented by nature of the industry and the proxy. Whereas LA, there is a history, a deep history of collecting.
Right.
And they really understood the idea of from the walls to the room concept of it's about the object, the life of the object, the narrative, the integrity, the craftsmanship, all of these details that go into making a work, collectible. So.
How would you define what's the difference between what we often talk about as like fine furniture versus collectible? What do you feel makes something collectible?
There's a few points that I think of. Scarcity.
Okay.
I think there has to be a demand, and there has to be scarcity in order to create the demand, right? From my point of view, I'm looking at when you talk about functional sculpture, there is that artistic expression, there's a strong narrative, there's a sculptural aspect to the work, there's novelty, whether materially or process driven or aesthetically. Something has to be new, it can't just be, and we're talking about the contemporary sense.
Right.
When a beautiful decorative object can also just be a beautiful chair or an exquisite, bench. But that is very definedly design or furniture versus being design. I think they're two kind of parallel.
Do you feel like that gets confused in this market these days? Like a lot of people are like, I'm making this beautiful chair and I don't make a lot of them. That makes it collectible. You know what I mean? I think there's been a lot of times in the pod we talk about this confusion between collectible design and fine furniture, because almost everybody wants to be in collectible, but it doesn't meet the marks sometimes, it
has to have it has to be relevant within the context of the
the time that is being made.
Yeah. There has to be a relevance that people are interested in it. I mean, it's just because a piece is rare, one of three,
doesn't make it
doesn't mean it's good. It's good design, because design also has there's ergonomic, there's solution to the process, there's all these different aspects that make it also functional in design.
So tell me a little bit about working with the designers while you were at Carpenters. You worked with some of the best, Campana Brothers, Studio Drift. What was the day-to-day with that? I know you're building the business side of things as well, but were you guys talking with the designers every day? Are you helping edit, influence, push them in certain directions? What's that?
A lot of that artistic expression and workshopping was spearheaded through the founders, but I did, because of my relationship and my position in the U.S., have a strong dialogue with many of the artists. We developed friendships in many ways. We had grown up and through together. I think Drift is a prime example of that. Drift, Lannika and Ralph, I knew even before, predating Carpenters, before I was at Carpenters, before they were even signed with Carpenters. I think I hosted them at the Bowery Hotel here. I was Lannika's first time ever coming to New York City. So to then a few years later come full circle, be working together in a more professional context. And there is a sense of camaraderie and friendship and nurturing and soundboarding and dialogue that happens just naturally. But I think there's many ways that, at least in my experience with Carpenters and being there, that sometimes the artists come with ideas and sometimes the ideas are very much influenced by the conversations with the founders and that we would all have together. Mm-hmm.
Is that because of the dynamics of trying to build someone's career in a particular way, or is it heavily sometimes sales oriented, where it's like these things,
Of course, there's always a commercial aspect, but you don't ever want that to overshadow the artistic integrity, right? Yeah. And I think Carpenters, the founders, are exceptional editors. They are really great at pushing the artist and helping them kind of come to maybe a new realization of the work or a new evolution of the work, to developing some breakthrough pieces as well, and some breakthrough series. So there's always this element of push and pull, and through those developmental conversations, you arrive at a result that's ready to be brought to life.
Did you feel like you formed your sense of, what you love and what you're passionate about over the last, 10, 15 years of working there, or being, how did your sense, I know you grew up in New Hope, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Your grandfather was a developer.
Yes.
And there's some sense of, mid-century.
It's in the DNA there.
It's in the DNA there, right?
You can't deny
so
it.
Is that when your, quote unquote taste started to develop, or is this something that you've been forming over the years? I mean, you worked in fashion. I feel like you've always kind of been connected to design in some way, but where do you feel like your senses?
Since a kid, I was always, my grandfather was a developer, and he was in real estate and also like vertical. So he was doing architecture. Everything was kind of falling under his business. So I think just by proxy that it was always in my background. Right. I used to take architectural plans, the gridded paper, and be mapping out, my dream house. I would be doing, fashion illustration sketches. I was always creative. I've been a creative person my whole life. That kind of segued into working in fashion and then working in design. And you develop your own taste. Your taste evolves. It changes. I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But it's always been there in the DNA. I think growing up in New Hope, which, it was home to Nakashima, Paul Evans, so many of these mid-century masters, really informed me subliminally because you're just surrounded by it. I grew up down the street from the Nakashima estate. Cool. So that was, we would drive our bikes.
You would bike there?
Yeah. A beautiful property. So there's always kind of this background and history that I think has informed me. But then when you start traveling and you start getting exposed to other cultures and other sensibilities, then you also change and you marry what you know with what you're learning. And we're always learning. We're always excited and curious about new things. And that's what I think. You never want to stay stagnant, right?
No, of course not. Yeah. I just wonder if that's like how you've kind of then come to some of your curatorial stuff. Like, did this education come through working at the gallery system and in Design Miami and stuff like that? Is that
completely?
Yeah.
Well, I've definitely.
So you've like self-educated yourself on this stuff, like you've really.
Yeah. I mean, I went to school for art history,
right?
And
Drexel.
Yeah, but
no one can really teach you about this kind of history.
No, it's intuitive, and you have to be curious. And I read a lot, I see a lot, I have a lot of conversations. I have so many friends that are artists and designers. When you're really immersed in it, I think that gives you more perspective, and it's the best education that you can have, right? And with kind of how that has segued now into this new chapter for me, which has been now 2 years. It's crazy. It's been 2 years, but
it feels like fast.
It's wild. You never want to be, at least I never want to be stuck doing one thing. And that's why I'm so curious. I'm always working on different types of projects, whether it's curatorial project or, helping to develop a young designer, or the advisory and the procurement, which we do a lot of as well, both with, interior designers, but also for private clients. I think having this dynamic approach to the business is what keeps us going.
Yeah.
And that's even from the curatorial position that I've been holding now. I do believe that people don't live in silo. You don't just walk into the way that you experience work in a gallery is much different than the way that you live in it. And I wanted to start curating and presenting work of equal caliber in conversation, whether it's a painting, a sculpture, or a design piece, historic and contemporary, and creating these dialogues, because then you start to look at interdisciplinarily, like how Giuseppe Pannone and Andrea Bronzi, there's a conversation there, academically, historically, aesthetically, I mean, and thematically, there's so many different ways that you can make these connection points. And when you start to see it from that perspective, I think it gives it a little bit more interest.
we can, I was going to get there. I wanted to talk about 3080s but now it seems like we can jump into that. I mean, cause I see, as I zoomed out of your career, I was like, okay, she started here and then she was at Carpenters for a long time. I want to talk about the fairs with you a little bit, but it seemed like, you went from this grand scale of a global gallery, and then now you've kind of gone into this more intimate thing. And
intimate's a good word.
Yeah, and I'm curious why, because it's obviously a reaction to your previous experience, right? Or it seems like that. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but like that's what it feels like from my point of view. And I'm wondering where that reaction comes from and why, like what you saw that you wanted to kind of change for yourself and create a different experience for collectors as they come to 3080s. Yeah. Yeah.
Good segue, good point. I think after 10 years of being in a very intense growth trajectory, a lot changed in my life too. I wanted to kind of take a beat and reflect and think about what I love most about what we do, which is that intimacy, the human connection. I'm a very social being. So to be what I love doing most is bringing people together and storytelling. I think more than anything, I'm a storyteller. So to bring people together and to be able to tell the story and to introduce them to artists, introduce them to great creatives is really what drives me. And I also realized that I like working with small teams. There's something about that I never want to lose that creative side of what I'm doing. So to be able to have a space that is my platform, my playground, to be able to create these narratives and to tell the stories and be able to, bring great art and design together under one roof, and then be able to bring people into that world is exactly where I want to be right now.
Yeah. So like kind of walk me through what it's like when someone comes to the salon.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So Salon is a collaborative platform. So thank you for referencing that way, because I do steer clear about the word of calling it a gallery. It's more of a creative, collaborative exhibition space. The space is set on 70th Street. It's in an old historic brownstone, Victorian brownstone. It's really beautiful. And that's what I was really drawn to, was this quirky architectural character that the space had. It's original, it's from 1887. And that lends itself as the backdrop for these beautiful design pieces and artworks to be able to speak. And we're by appointment during the day, and that allows us to be able to really give attention to our clients and to be able to host. And I say it as hosting because it is like we are hosting. We walk them through each room, each piece. We tell the stories. It's a conversation. There's questions. There's dialogue, and then that starts as a opener to who that artist is, who that designer is, what else they've done. So we'll sit, we'll have a coffee, we'll look into and go deeper into that artist story or body of work, and it's enjoyable and it's more of an experience. So it's the opposite of when you're going and you're hitting the galleries in Chelsea and you do 10 galleries in an hour. It's much more of an intimate human experience to make connection with work.
Was that a reaction to the big behemoth of gallery system?
Yeah, and not necessarily my experience at Carpenters. I think it's an added value to the gallery system. That's why I say it's collaborative space, because sometimes I'm pulling material from private collectors on secondary market. I'm pulling it directly from artist studios. I'm pulling from private dealers, and I'm working in tandem with galleries. And the way that somebody will experience that same artist work in my space is supplementary and incredibly different to how they will experience walking into the white box gallery space.
So you don't have any kind of exclusivity over the artists or the works. I mean, or you have kind of, it's consignment kind of thing.
It depends. There are a few artists that I work directly with and that I consider myself more of an agent with. But and with that, I'm also working with them with some of the other galleries. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
But for the most part, you're right. It's more, it's consignments and sourcing, finding work. Mm-hmm.
Right. And you also have mentioned the agency aspect. So what does that mean? So you have it's the salon, but the agency also functions as, what is it? We do
advisory.
Advisory.
Yeah. Advisory and sourcing. Mm-hmm.
So over the years, you've met a lot of collectors and they come to you and they say, hey, we're looking for this or that. And you.
Yeah. Or they don't even know what they're looking for. And we sit down, it's our educational process and looking at the project. Sometimes I'm working with their interior designer. Sometimes they don't have an interior designer because the project isn't warranted to have an interior designer.
Where does their interest come from for starting to collect this? Are a lot of the collectors new to the game, or are they people that have?
It's so mixed.
It's so mixed.
Yeah. I think sometimes it's also realizing the cost of making a custom no-name table could be the same cost of investing in a great design piece.
That's a great point, yeah.
And that's kind of where a lot of the times I think I've come in and helped to the client to recognize that for that same price, for that value, you can buy an incredible historic piece or support and patron an amazing, contemporary talent. And that becomes exciting.
Are they concerned about value? Do you guys talk about that in terms of like it retaining value, potential value in the marketplace, maybe in the secondary market at some point?
I think that's always a conversation, and I think that that's something as an industry that we have to work on.
Yeah.
Especially a secondary market is extremely important when you're thinking about long-term trajectory and value.
Totally.
Right?
Especially if you're asking people to pay, decent amounts
completely.
For these pieces. Yeah.
So I think, there's never a guarantee of how the piece will live on. So you do have to love it, and you also have to position it when you're buying contemporary that you are a patron of this artist and designer, and we're propelling and helping to support that savoir-faire or that know-how. And without that patronship, that would be not possible.
Right.
So there is that aspect to it. But then when you're looking at the historic work, there is typically a market, a reference of whether through auctions, through private sale, there's going back to that conversation of scarcity and demand.
Do you pay attention to the secondary market?
I do.
And what have you thought about the last 2 auctions? It seems like Collectible is
very strong.
Very strong. Like the strongest of all the markets.
The strongest
so
it's been.
What do you think that means for us, for the industry? Because by the way, it's not heavily contemporary. It's not like there's a lot of it's more established.
Well, I think it's our job too to get behind, our word as a contemporary.
I agree. When is that going to happen?
Well, I'm working on it.
So you're single-handedly trying.
No, but it's a conversation I'm having with many of my colleagues. And
is that people at Sotheby's, Christie's, and things like this? Where now.
And also the other gallerists.
Do you think that this is going to happen where we'll start to see the very contemporaries, the ultra contemporary, kind of like what, the exciting sales that in the art market are? Do you think that will start to happen in the design world?
I feel like that requires everybody to get behind it. And that means,
And what gets people, don't exciting prices get people behind it?
I think exciting prices do, but also getting behind it in terms of, the galleries supporting the secondary market of their artists.
Oh.
And I think also when you see a work come at auction for one of, a contemporary artist designer that you are a patron of or an agent of or support, that you get behind it. So that we can have a consistency in the market.
And when you say get behind it, what exactly do you mean?
From my perspective, I encourage if I see a piece from one of the artists that I support or that I've helped place throughout the years, I highly recommend for my clients to go bid on it at auction and to go for it. But they should support it if they're.
What about encouraging them to auction some of the works that they have in their contemporary?
Why would you want to do that right now? If you're living with it and you love it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, to ignite the market.
But if you can still buy that piece on the primary, I don't think that you should be selling it on the secondary.
So when you
if you do, let's do that privately,
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a market for that privately?
There is.
Yeah, you can trade those. Yeah.
Yeah, there is.
Interesting.
Because people, they move or they're getting divorced or there's different reasons why people sell their
divorce, death, and there's the 3Ds that
So instead of unloading your entire collection, let's be really strategic and mindful about how we can find new homes and have this piece live on in a beautiful life.
So, are you a fan of what's going on? You obviously follow.
I think it's great.
The what's going on in the art market. Because this is the only thing I have to compare it to. It's like the art market has this idea. A lot of people buy early, then 2 years later you'll see things on the chopping block, or either they soar or they sink, and a lot of careers are, there's boom and bust in a lot of ways for those careers. So are you like? You don't want to see the design world go in that direction, or is it?
I'm much more in favor of more long, slower, trajectory than having pieces be fly by night. I think that's also really, we have to be considerate about the artist as well. That makes or breaks their careers. Totally. And it's really hard to come back from that. So.
It's nearly impossible.
You shouldn't, I think you're like judicial responsibility to not, move too quickly through that process. That's make sure that their pieces are being placed in great collections. The collectors also have the integrity that they're,
going to keep them
and the pieces.
And maybe.
And if there is, then exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. So let's talk a little bit about fairs. You've had a huge amount of experience at fairs.
I have done my fair share of fairs on both sides.
Right. And geez, I think I saw Carpenters at every single fair ever, that
we were
tried
very heavy in the fair circuit.
Was that quintessential for its growth?
I believe so. I think fairs are essential for the development of a dealer in that sense, or gallerist, to be able to get out there and to be exposed to new markets, to new collectors, new communities, and to be able to share, their purview, their artists with that world. Now then it's the responsibility of the fairs to make sure that they're delivering on their side too. So it's a whole, community that we all have to participate.
I mean, it seems like, Design Miami is obviously spearheading this kind of global expansion. They're going to Paris. They're going to be in the Middle East soon, next 2027. On the side of, as a designer, I've heard a lot of gallerists say, and maybe, I don't know if this is true or not, they've said to me, the fairs are more for the fair owners. They make the money. We don't really make the money at the fairs.
Whoever's saying that is extremely short-sighted.
Okay.
Because I can tell you through my experience being on the gallery side, working at fairs, it's not about what you close the day of the fair. Right. It's the relationships and the connections that you make, and those relationships might come down, and it's your responsibility then to nurture those relationships. And then 6 months down the road, that might translate into a transaction, into a sale. It might translate into a major commission for the artist. You might have met a museum curator on booth that then it turns into a show in 3 years. So you can't be looking so short term. And I think that people are very quick to judge and be so doom or gloom about
well, we didn't make any sales on the floor. Yeah.
And some of that is actually it's related to also other socioeconomic issues that are happening in the world, right? So people might be just pulling back their purse streams, but they might still be going around and looking and seeing, and you make those connections and those relationships, and then further down the line, they remember you. Yeah. So it is important.
It's interesting you brought that up, because I wanted to touch on that a bit. The art market's going through a little bit of a slump. Does that correlate to the collectible design market and, the purse strings being kind of pulled back? Do you see that happening?
In some cases, yes, but at the same time, people are still building homes. They're still moving. They're still, decorating and designing, and there will always be a necessity for a chair or a table. Right. And I don't see that the same person that has, the Warhol on the wall is going to, not consider a collectible piece for their space. Maybe the whole house isn't going to be, full of them, but they're still going to be considerate of having some special objects.
Because I'm always trying to figure out, how big this market can be, if it's something that can reach the art world level, if we're always going to be this kind of smaller, more niche marketplace,
It's a good question.
It's because as you see fairs expanding, there's not a lot of galleries coming online. You don't see a ton of new galleries coming online. I also wonder why that is. There are the establishment galleries, but I wonder if just the cost of doing business.
I was just going to get into that. It's the sheer cost of moving a credenza is way different than shipping a painting halfway across the world.
Right.
So
there's just natural limitations there.
It's just the cost associated with it. So it's very high. You need more space to be able to show design than you do showing painting, two-dimensional work.
Right.
Real estate is a cost. All of this overheads factor into, also the production of a piece is much different when you're, as when you're producing these physical objects. There's a hard material cost, not just talking about projected market cost. It's
labor costs have also spiked.
It's a much different animal that you're dealing with. So I do think that that's also why the market is a little bit slower to progress to that level.
Yeah. So
which is not a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing.
You don't? Mm-mm. That it slows down a bit, because it felt like hyperscale for a while there. It felt like the 2010 to 2020 just felt like it was a rocket ship. And then COVID hit. Well, COVID was insane.
Because everyone was in their homes and looking about what different things that they could do.
I thought it was going to go. I was like, this is amazing what's happening now.
For our world, it was very, very positive.
Yeah.
You know, there was a bit of a hiccup for a couple months, and then it started to come back, and I was so grateful for that.
Yeah, me too. But it was rough. The following years, you noticed that, okay, well, everyone renovated, everyone bought, so there was like a slowdown, and then I feel like it's starting to pick up again. But it's hard to figure out.
Yeah, that's life. There's always going to be ups and downs.
Yeah.
So in the good times, you have to anticipate for the lulls too, and I think that's just business ethic, right? So being aware that this might not continue, or it's likely it's not continuing forever, that there will be a slowdown, and then there will be. It's a cycle.
Yeah, it's a cycle. I know. It's just that we hadn't
completely cyclical.
It's the first cycle that I've experienced in my career. You know, where it's like, oh, I've been through a 12-year, like all of the. Not highs and lows. You know, it's just an interesting thing to kind of reflect on. You're like, oh, wow, this is a different time than it was. And then, you know, you wonder, is it what's going on politically in the United States?
There's so many factors that play into this.
I know. It's, that's why I wanted to have having you on, you know, you're obviously in the thick of it as well. On the designer side, I'm in the thick of it as a designer. So we're always trying to figure out these waves that we're experiencing.
Yeah, it's important for us to have these conversations.
In terms of the fairs, the last thing I wanted to kind of touch about that is is there's this word that goes around that's called fair fatigue. And also there's this idea that you don't really get to really experience, it's like shopping for art and design. You know what I mean? Has that been really beneficial for our industry, or is this, it's just like the nature of the beast, you know? Because I think what you're doing with 3080s is kind of like where, you know, like everyone in this world of exclusivity and all that, they want a more exclusive feeling. And I think that that's probably what you're providing for them in that kind of context. Like your salon will never do a fair, or will it?
No, I don't want to. I don't want to. I'm not a gallery, and I support the galleries. So I think of it more of a curatorial platform. Okay. And it supports the advisory and not procurement. But that's not because I don't like fair. I mean, I'm also working very closely as a curatorial partner with
the LA.
With LA, with Design Miami. And we did a project this past summer in Aspen. And we're looking at doing another project in the summer as well together. So I'm very pro-fair. I think you brought up an interesting word in your
fatigue.
Not fair fatigue, experience. So I think that the fair experience, and this is something that I feel Design Miami is kind of focusing on. How do you create an experience that is definably unique in one market versus another? Because at the end of the day, the fair fatigue comes from you go to all of these fairs and you have an amazing time seeing your friends, seeing your colleagues. You know, some are more successful than others, but the fatigue happens because you're seeing the same thing over and over and over again. And it actually doesn't even matter if you're in Hong Kong or if you're in New York City, because the actual construct of the fair is basically cookie cutter the same. So how do you create unique experiences that will bring, you know, that sense of intimacy to one city or another?
Do you feel like that what Jesse's doing with Basic Space and Design Space is kind of answering that, or trying to? Or?
I think it's along those lines, yes. And I do think that this Design Miami in situ program, like what they've created in Seoul, what we did in LA, it's a lot of storytelling, and it might not be every year in that specific city, but it's kind of an intervention to dialogue with the local history and the design, you know, an architectural reference to that city. That's kind
of the vibe.
The angle that it should be going. Yeah. And then you have your main fairs. You know, Paris has turned into a main fair, and also architecturally, that experience that you have in that Hotel Particulier is so different than what you have in Miami in the tent. So there's different ways of injecting that into the experience.
Do you think the Middle East? We've sold quite a bit to the Middle East. I feel like it's a robust, area now. It's kind of exploding. I think
it's very favorable.
Yeah.
They've been very supportive of the design.
I'm sure they want a lot of activity there. They want a lot of sports, design. They're bringing everything over there. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting time to see how that culture is exploding. After almost 2 decades in the industry, what excites you about the future, the next 10 years, let's say, of your career?
Of my career.
Yeah, of your career. Because, this has been 2 years now that you've been doing this new venture. And
I've been having fun again.
Yeah.
I think that was a big thing, being able to be excited and inspired and having fun, and being able to also be nimble. Maybe 30, 80 East, I decide in 2 or 3 years, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to shut it and move. And that's okay, because and then I can, reinvent the way that I'm doing, the business. I haven't really thought, and I never really have had a 10-year plan or a 5-year plan, maybe 5 years, but
yeah,
it's always been allowing, without getting too philosophical, but I've been intuitive about listening to the signs and feeling what is the right direction to move and where to go from here. And that's always led me to my next place. So,
but you're through and through in the design world. It seems like
I'm just a creative.
You're creative.
Yeah. So I love the whole I've always been a hardcore design. I think that's not going to change.
Yeah.
I'm so entrenched in it.
Yeah, I mean, you've made a whole life. I mean, and
I love it. It's like a drug. You're addicted to it. You're passionate about it. I don't know what else I would be doing. Oh, I did think about this actually, because I love hosting, and it's also part of the experience at 30 East in the evenings. And you're going to have to come to the next one. But we do readings or drawing salons. Or I love
drawing salons.
Oh, we had a figurative drawing salon,
like a nude model.
Oh, it was awesome. And I had
I haven't done that since undergrad.
I haven't done it since art school either. And
cool.
it was so great to get, and it was like meditation. And we had 40 people over, and
40?
Yeah. I gave sketchbooks out and charcoal and
that's awesome.
pencils to everybody. And we had the, 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes.
The
with the posing.
Yeah.
And
that's fun.
We staged it. We had a DJ, we had great music, great food, everything. And we had staged it as for the poses and the lighting, everything's being the style of Mapplethorpe. So
cool.
It was very, very fun. But the best part about that was that for 45 minutes, people were so into it. No one was speaking. It was just the music,
got really quiet.
And the posing and the drawing. No one was on their phones. It was so beautiful to watch people be so into the moment. And I think
you probably had some really good artists there.
But
it'd be so intimidating to be life drawing in front of like some of your.
It was so great. I want to do
colleagues.
Another one of those.
That seems fun.
And then we sometimes have literary salons where we give them a prompt that's usually tied to whatever the theme of the show is. And Drew Zaba, actually, who's the former editor of Document Journal, would curate these evenings with some young writers. And it was really cool to see how they have interpreted, some of these topics and themes, and to have that platform has been, I think, the most exciting. And so, of course, the curatorial aspect of it and what we're showing, but I love to be able to have this space to be able to bring people together and to be able to activate that. Yeah. And that's what was leading me to this long-winded answer. But I thought about it, and I love hosting so much. I thought, I would love to have a restaurant with 10 tables.
Okay.
I say this now, and I'm sure I would regret it if I actually had it. But the idea of having a space where, friends can pop in and you can be there every night and have different chefs come and cook. And I have a friend, Alejandro Alcocer, that had the studio downtown in Browns before. And for me, it was all about who he was as a person. And he would bring together the most interesting people. And, you could always stop by and see him and meet somebody really wonderful, at the table. So I don't know a place like that. He's since left. He lives in France now. And there's never been a replacement for that for me. And I don't know where in New York you go to for that type of experience, because it really was just a moment in time. It's 20 years, but this moment,
I feel like you'll pull something together.
Do you want to open a restaurant together?
I don't want to fund it, but I would help. I'll design for it. That'd be fun.
Like maybe you change out the design every season. I'm also into Auntie Mame, was one of my favorite films as a child, which just made me very telling of why I do what I do now. Is every season the house would be changed differently, Yeah, that could be a great idea.
I was going to ask you, how often do you guys change the salon around, or is it just kind of based on?
It's very organic. If a client wants a piece today, I will send it out today, and it's never going to be static like that. I'll bring in and rotate as it goes, but thematically, the changeovers are 3 times a year.
3 times a year,
and that is very intentional. I don't want to do 6-week shows. It's intense, it's a lot, but some people do that, and it's a lot of planning, but then you're never fully present with what you're showing because you're thinking about the next show and the next show after that and the next show after that. Right. And what I really want, talking about this kind of slowing down and being able to program around the themes and be able to have a period of time where people can come through and they could come back, and also we can just enjoy what we're doing in the moment, which is really hard.
I never really got the monthly turnover because also as on the artist side of things, you're like, wow, I only get 30 days.
Exactly.
It's not fun.
It's not fair for anyone.
Because sometimes you spend 2 years building that show, and then all of a sudden it's done in 30 days.
That moment.
Yeah.
That's what fairs are for. Fairs should be,
quick and
efficient.
And dirty. Yeah. That actually, you made me think of something here that there's not a lot of design criticism, when it comes to, like, when you do a show in the art world, you get, Roberta Smith. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why do you think that is? And is that something that's needed to kind of help sort of the scholarship of design and that kind of side of things to build?
Yeah, I'd like to see more criticism.
Yeah.
Good, bad, ugly, all of it.
Right. Where there's not a lot of places to find that, you know what I mean? There's not a lot. Why are magazine writers not, put. Sometimes I'll talk to my writer friends. I'm like, yo.
I've had some good reads lately.
Yeah. Didn't Carpenter start the design edit? Was a blog? It was like of a blog, no?
The design edit, which was intended for that, they no longer.
I think it's gone. Right? Yeah.
I'll get back to you on that because I do know that there's the woman who was writing and over as the editor and overseeing it, Emily. She, I think, is 2.0ing it, or in the process.
Because I felt like that was
and she has full ownership of it now, and I think it's gone to a new life.
Because that was this is the first thing that I've seen.
But it was very academic and great criticism.
Correct, and it was but it feels like it needs to be in print for some reason.
No, that's actually a thought that I had. If there was an annual book or biannual book, and something that was physical that you could keep and collect, that could be a really interesting segue of not just having it be this digital blog and this digital read, but also have it just feel a little bit more substantial.
Feels it feels like the industry needs a couple of these things to kind of, feel even more and more established as we go.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. I mean, we have the art world to base it on. That's why I'm basing it all off of that. But so if you could give advice or build a career for a young designer from scratch today, what would be some of the things you would tell them or do or advise them to do?
I think stay true to your practice. Take your time. It's not a difficult question because it's so specific to the individual, right? But I do think things stay true to your practice and taking your time and not giving up. And
how does someone get to someone like Ashlee?
I don't even know.
How does someone get to Carpenters or?
Oh, you mean as a designer? Reach out, pick up the phone, send an email.
With their stuff.
No, I think that's best just to say I want to have a meeting, really? And I'd like your advice. I'd like you to take a look at something. I will never turn that down. I don't. I give young designers advice all the time. Mm-hmm. Take a coffee.
Do you think that people can slow down? I mean, it's hard to say, okay, I slow down. How do you slow down when the world and the pace and having to make an income and all that just keeps you in the grind?
I don't think anyone wants to put out a collection or a body of work that's unresolved. So that takes time. Mm-hmm. And you also shouldn't be afraid of creating and making the mistake. Mistakes are good. They get you to your next level. I actually sat in a friend's class at Eindhoven a year ago, and I realized that this generation that was going through that, they were so scared to to do it and make a mistake that they weren't doing the project. I was like, when I was in school, if I came to this class without the project done, it would be like
that's
failure.
A very competitive school, though.
Yes.
That's like where.
No, of course, but at least try it. At least try. Sure. Get what's in your head out into the physical world. At least try, and then I think through that process, with the guidance and the critique and the feedback, you workshop it together, and then it goes to the next phase and next phase and next phase. So what I mean by slow down, it doesn't mean it means take your time, and actually continue doing the work.
Yeah.
But it was funny to me. I was like, wait, if I showed up with no project, like nothing, where's project that's in my head?
Yeah, I've heard that there's sometimes critiques just on
I have the idea.
Yeah, I have
of what
this
it
idea.
Is. Like, close your eyes and envision it.
I went to Carnegie Mellon to meet the graduates there, and they would sit down and have critiques about the thoughts they're having, the ideas before they produce something, which I thought was crazy.
That's pretty cool though. That's cool.
Yeah.
But when you're at the phase, when you're at the phase, because that's like more like the intellectual development of the idea to get to the place. Then when you're putting it out into the world, that it's like resolved enough that that's actually super cool. I'm talking about more like the project's supposed to be done. Yeah. Where's the physical project?
A couple of designers come through over the years where maybe they were too young to get kind of shot out and didn't really know how to handle that, because let's say like
I'm thinking about it.
If you come out the box, right, come out the gate with some very particular work, collectors then want that work from you for a long, they want that iconic work from you. It can kind of you can kind of get stuck sometimes as a designer. And if you're too young, you don't even know how to really manage that.
Right. Sometimes I feel, so and short answer is yes, I can't think of exactly an example of it right now. But I also feel
I'm thinking of someone from the gallery, but
okay. Well, no, what happens is, and this is where it's about being a good editor too, and not being so caught up in the commercial aspect of the success of it, is once there's too much of it out there at some point, when you flood the market with a specific body of work, it's going to lose the precious nature of it. So, and it's important for a creative to also go through they just had a breakthrough collection. Next collection might not be, or series of work might not be as commercially exciting, might be artistically as more exciting, but maybe not as commercially as interesting. And that's okay. Or it might be a total bust.
Now, is that like a conversation you're having with the
Yes.
Really? You're like, hey, I think we need to pare it back for
Yes.
Really?
And focus on making new work. Focus on your new ideas. And I think that's an important role of an editor, is knowing when to say, okay, like pull back and not get too caught up in the financial success, pull back. And also it will make the interest in that previous series of work more valid.
How do just a logistical question, like, does the gallery...
these are conversations I'm having with artist friends too, as a friends, as soundboarder.
Gotcha. Does the gallery help support them as sales? Like, are people on a monthly, what are they called? Like an allowance or something?
I can't really speak to that. I don't know. I think that might be happening circumstantially with I don't know.
That's what I always think about. It's like, okay, I understand, like, as my career went, and I'm like, okay, I gotta make more and more work, and then I want to slow it down, but you're like, well, I can't because I gotta support all this infrastructure. So I always just wonder what that's like,
I also feel like, that would be happening perhaps if the artist was exclusive with what, but I don't know if I necessarily believe in total exclusivity either. So unless the gallery is really
like has a
committing to a high return number per year for that artist, otherwise they're beholden to the gallery, and then they can't potentially have these other outlets for income or for creative output. What do you feel?
No.
What's your feeling on it?
I've never loved the idea of exclusivity. I think that's partially why over the last 12 years I've never, worked with a gallery, because they did want full exclusivity, and that just seems like hard to.
If they can commit to certain numbers,
Yeah,
or maybe it's just one body, or maybe it's one body of work.
That I like.
That I think is a
like
good middle ground.
Like Vincenzo's, I think, felt like that. And even Matthew Lanier, I feel like worked in that kind of model, was like, okay, you're going to represent this.
Right.
And then I still have my.
That gives you a little bit more autonomy as an artist.
Right.
And flexibility.
But I think it's interesting that you don't think exclusivity is the way to go. Yeah.
Unless there's certain conditions that are favorable for both sides.
Right. Well, this has been awesome.
This has been great. I need to
Did
see
you
more
enjoy
of you.
Your first,
my first podcast.
First podcast ever. I'm honored that you did it with on Design
Well, you're
Discord.
an old friend, so this was easy. It was like having a conversation with an old friend.
All right, well, that's a wrap, guys. Thanks for joining us on Design Discord for this awesome episode. You know the drill. Hit that like button, the subscribe button. It really helps us. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube, where you see this whole thing recorded. So please subscribe. Send us a message. Send me a DM on Instagram. I'd love to hear from you guys. And I will see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.